Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yo, yo, check, check. 1, 2. Back in full effect over here. You know what I'm saying? Yo, they on one out here. Man. Trimming the trees outside, so pardon all the background noise. I could probably put a dampener behind the mic, but it is what it is. So we're just gonna go ahead and push through it. Even though it's really annoying, you know what I mean? But whatever. Yeah, so I wanted to go live real quick, man. Just give everyone a quick shout out for showing some love. In fact, let me see if this works. It might be better. Yo, check, check. All right, cool. See if that's better. What's going on? What's Gucci? I wanted to just dampen that sound if it's possible. But whatever. Anyway, we're gonna have to push through it. What I wanted to get into real quick was what I was talking about last week, how to read a book. And real quick, just to kind of put people on what I was talking about. If you subscribe and you reshare, first 5 to do that, I'm gonna throw some books at. This is what I got to give away. Albert Camus, The Stranger, real dope existentialism. I got one of the copies, volume 12 of Lucretius, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, part of the Great Books Britannica series. Real dope for real dope for stoicism and real practical philosophy. I know a lot of cats were talking about that and hit me up on some practical philosophy. So this is dope. Sacred Writings from the Harvard University, sort of Harvard's great books. It's called the 5-foot bookshelf. I have it behind me, right there. Those red ones behind that photo. That's Harvard's great books. This is Sacred Writings. This is real dope. This is it's got Christian writings, Buddhist writings, Hindu writings, and Mohammedan writings, which is Islam. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful copy. This is real fire. My advisor in undergrad for my thesis, Dr. Marcus Bassito. This is a little bit more on the futurist tip, understanding how the future unfolds, by Marcus Bassito. This copy actually has some of my personal notes in it. When I went to undergrad, I was able to study economics and psychology primarily. And my senior thesis was on blockchain technology and how that could be used in central banking. And so this is a really cool book from a futuristic perspective. And then this is Rene Descartes, Discourses on Method and Meditations from Penguin. Real dope, real chill. So I got 5 books that I found. I went out to where I keep a lot of my books outside, and I said, you know what, let me try to find books that I'm willing to part with, but also that I think could add a very cool. So I want to jump into it, man. And this is the first time I'm doing this really like on on a wide scale, like kind of putting us on some education. But appreciate everyone, just going into it. But back to so how you want to do it is, if you're on IG, where I've been really sort of like kind of blasting the marketing for the I'm reluctant to call this a podcast, because podcasts are lame, but some are dope, but this is like just real talk, like whatever, call it what you want. But what I'm talking about here is, if you hit me and found me on IG, hit me on IG. Like, first of all, share the channel, Exalted Dialectics, share it, and then screenshot that, and then DM me at cosmic.ruination, and then I'll get back to you, and then hit me with your address, and I'll shoot you one of these books. You can request one, or I'm just going to do it randomly, whatever. I'll also post pictures of the ones that I'm going to give away on the stories. But I thought that'd be a good sort of soft incentive. You know what I mean? I mean, you're deciding to spend leisure time with me, so I'm going to give back. You know what I mean? And ultimately, I think that's what education's about. That's what intellectual activity should be about, rather than just trying to one up one another and be competitive rather than collaborative. So collaboration is the name of the game moving forward, because honestly, bro, like once you get to a certain level, there's not really competition anymore. You're just competing with yourself. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right, on to the actual, what we're trying to get on. Boom. How to read a book, why this is so important. I was kind of commenting a little bit on it a while ago, maybe a week ago or so. So Mortimer Adler is a very interesting figure in the American academic landscape. He actually went to, I think, Columbia for his undergrad, and then didn't graduate because he didn't want to take swimming, but then was able to get enrolled in a PhD program. And I think he did a PhD in psychology. But he teamed up with a guy named Robert Hutchins, who was one of the youngest university presidents at age 30. Robert Hutchins was the president of University of Chicago at age 30. Robert Hutchins is a very controversial figure within the academic landscape, because he bulldozed the University of Chicago's football stadium and built a library on it. And basically the notion was, hey, you're here to come to school to learn. You're not here to, watch a football game or something. So there's a lot of sort of controversy around how that goes. But either way, those guys, they got together, right? So Mortimer Adler and Robert Hutchins got together at U Chicago, and they put out the Great Books, the Britannica Great Books, which is behind me. Some of y'all might know about the Great Books. I think there's sort of a renaissance going right now around America, where people are starting to realize that they don't know anything about Western civilization or Western culture. And, that becomes kind of problematic when we start to engage in critical thinking and social commentary, because if we are actually not aware of kind of the substrata ideas and the substrata of where we're at in contemporary American culture or contemporary 21st century culture, even from a global perspective, then we're really not going to know kind of how to drill down through the layers, right? And so ultimately, the Great Books is a very important part of American culture, I think. It had a kind of ebb and flow and rise and decline. Salesmen would go around trying to sell this for $1,200. Now you can find half-price books or something. But I found mine for like $300. If you can find it for anything less than $500, you probably want to get it. I've found a number of different sets, both in pieces and full. If you can find one, that would be really, really cool. A nice investment in yourself. But the bottom line is behind the great books was Mortimer Adler and Robert Hutchins. I think Mortimer Adler did a lot more to kind of compile the books together to decide which ones are going to be part of the canon. But for better, for worse, that's what we got. And so I think it's a beautiful survey of Western civilization, starting with ancient Greece and working its way through the first and second centuries into your medieval period, into your Renaissance, Enlightenment, and then at the very end, where you get into Heidegger and you start getting into, more the, postmodernity has its own set of issues and whatnot, but it certainly kind of gets into that. So this book is pretty cool because this is the beginning. This book should be the beginning of any kind of serious commitment to self-education. Autodidact is another way to say that, right? Autodidacticism, you're teaching yourself, you're self-taught. A lot of people don't have time to go to college. People don't have time to go to, maybe don't have resources to go to grad school or whatever. And so you can certainly kind of begin to educate yourself in this regard. I think Harvard also had that in mind when they did the 5-foot bookshelf. Robert Lowell put that together. Who did that? Charles Eliot was the president at the time, but Lowell was a very important figure in Harvard culture also to, open up the gates of knowledge and wisdom that would have been ordinarily incubated amongst like the privileged and the elites. But Lowell had certain different ideas about that in addition to Charles Eliot, which is why we have the Harvard classics, the Harvard edition of the great books. And so I have both right there. If you can find them, get them, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, if you subscribe and share, the first 5 people to do that are going to get a copy of either or, and you can tell me which one you want. So back to this, because I tend to go on crazy tangents. This is a very interesting guidebook on how to kind of begin to take apart books. So before I jump into it, I just want to say one thing. I mean, reading books is a commitment. When you open up Netflix or HBO Live or HBO Now, or even spend time on IG or whatever you do, whatever you give your mind to, you're making a commitment. You're saying, look, I'm going to take an hour of my time or 2 hours of my time, and I'm going to focus and channel all my intellectual energy into this one thing to celebrate that, right? And that's like very thoughtless. We're very thoughtless about that. And so what I want to do is just kind of reintroduce the kind of commitment that actually is occurring at an implicit level. You're implicitly saying, I'm giving you my intellectual force for the next hour or 2 or 3 hours. And that's a serious deal. And so you want to make sure you're real mindful about what you give yourself to. So in addition to this comment, I just want to say that not all books are the same, right? There's different qualities and calibers of knowledge and of things you can experience, right? You have Mickey D's and then you have your 5-star restaurant, you know what I mean? And that's no disrespect to either or. It's just saying that there is a sort of hierarchy, an implicit hierarchy in what we celebrate. Same thing could be the same thing could be applied to music. Not always in the subway. Then you have Grammy Award winners, but what's the difference, right? And I'm not sure what that is. There is an aesthetic distance between the two, but some might get more meaning out of this one, and others might get more meaning out of that one. The whole point is that you're giving your mind to something when you're in front of it. And I just want to make that point about books is that, my mom loves those books you can get at Kroger or Albertsons or HEB or whatever, Walmart. And they're like romance thrillers for like $2. They're like this thick. And it's like, okay, Mom, you'll give your mind to that. But if I give you this little essay, you won't give your mind to that. And that's her choice. That's her prerogative. But I'm obviously more inclined towards reading things that are of a classic nature. They're not necessarily pop culture. although I do like pop culture, there's some things I can learn about the world, things I can learn about myself when I engage in it. But I'm certainly more oriented towards perennial things, classic things, thousand-year-old things, ancient texts. Specifically, ancient texts is what kind of my forte is. So you'll hear me talk a lot about the Bible, or you hear me talk a lot about Gilgamesh, or I might bring up some, Taoist literature or whatever. But there's always um, sort of grounding that what we can experience now, there is a deeper level. So all I'm saying is that it's stacked on one another. Okay, back to this. So I got a few notes here that I just want to kind of go into that really help us with the kind of reading of the book, of how to read a book. And it's broken up into a couple parts. But the first part is kind of like the dimensions of reading. And so in Mortimer Adler's thinking, there is a first level of reading called the elementary reading, and I'll break it down real quick. There's stages and levels. There's initial stages and so in the first level, which is elementary reading, it's broken down into a couple different parts. So the first stages of elementary reading, let's see here. So in elementary reading, what you're doing is really just starting to learn how to read. And you are, I'll read this from page 25 here. It's incidentally worth observing that something quite mysterious, almost magical, occurs during this stage. At one moment in the course of his development, the child, when faced with a series of symbols on a page, finds them quite meaningless. Not much later, perhaps only 2 or 3 weeks later, he has discovered meaning in them. He knows that they say the cat sat on the hat. How this happens, no one really knows, despite the efforts of philosophers and psychologists over 2.5 millennia to study the phenomena. And what he's talking about, I'm going to keep going. Where does meaning come from, right? Where does meaning come from? How is it that a French child would find the same meaning in the symbols, le chat, c'est au ciel, sur le chapeau? Indeed, this discovery of meaning in symbols may be the most astounding intellectual feat that any human being ever performs, and most humans perform it before they're 7 years old. So he's asking this sort of magic of understanding, right? I've even heard it called the miracle of understanding. That how to bring meaning from a text and make it make sense in our minds. That is a very miraculous thing. A lot of people don't miracle of understanding. That how are we able to bring meaning from a text and make it make sense in our minds? That is a very miraculous thing. A lot of people don't kind of appreciate the kind of thing that goes on in that regard. So that's real dope. Pardon the sounds. My wife's in the kitchen, you know what I'm saying, making a pop. Anyway, back to this, right? So stages of learning to read. He goes through stages and levels. He talks about the meaning. He even gets into reading and the democratic ideal of education, which I thought was pretty interesting. But so then there's your elementary level of reading, and then your inspectional level of reading. And the inspectional level is pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty interesting. There's systemic skimming or pre-reading. So in other words, you open a book, and the first thing you do is you look at the cover, you look at the back. Make sure you read the back, right? A lot of people don't do that. Sometimes when it's a hardcover like this, you'll look at it, and then there's the dust jacket. Read that. Make sure you read both parts of the jacket. And then once you get past that, just kind of process that, then get into the table of contents. So you read the table of contents to kind of break down how the author has organized the table of contents. What the table of contents will do is prime you for the organizational structure of the text. And that way you're not just moving through it chaotically. Now, me, I'm a very chaotic person. I like chaos, but when it comes to reading a book, there's a certain discipline to it. And so I've actually made it a habit to read the front and the back, look at the dust cover, and then I jump into the table of contents because it's showing me the initial structure of the text, and that's very helpful. And also, an interesting point to make is that writers tend to spend a lot of time on the table of contents. So just be aware that it's not haphazard. This is actually a real thing. So the table of contents could actually break the entire book down. I've even seen some of the older texts, like from the 1800s and the early 1900s. The table of contents is like 30 pages because there's bullet points. And so you even see like kind of like the logic of how the text is written. And so that's the second part of elementary reading, which is that inspectional reading. And so again, you're kind of just inspecting the book, study the table of contents, turn the pages here, there, reading a paragraph or two. So this is where after you dissected the paragraphs, when you've dissected the table of contents, and you kind of, now you can jump into skimming around. So you just jump into any kind of paragraph and read it, take it in a little bit, and dip in and out of the text. Maybe you want to read a couple pages and see. You're just familiarizing yourself with the argument. That's all you're doing. So that's real dope. And then secondly, he gets into superficial reading. This is inspection reading part 2. And superficial reading, again, it's just you're going through the text, skimming, kind of taking it in. When it comes to reading speeds, one quick comment. Mortimer Adler was not a big fan of speed reading. In fact, he wasn't a fan of speed reading at all. And if you ever research some of his interviews on YouTube, you'll see him kind of get upset when someone called in and was like, "Yo, I teach the great books, but I'm also a speed reading teacher." And he was like, "What do you think about that?" And Mortimer was like, "Nah, man, I'm not down for that at all." And he was upset, because Mortimer said he never sat down to read more than 20 pages an hour with a pencil in his hand. And why is that? Because you're engaging the text. You are able to have a conversation with the text. Underline, mark your text up. In high school, I had a Central Catholic High School, shout out San Antonio, Robert Bain. Robert Bain would get upset if we didn't have, if our books weren't marked up. Because it showed that we weren't taking it seriously. We weren't engaging in the text. Now, there's different folks that talk about like, well, I spent, $30 on this book. I'm not going to mark it up. I want to resell it. And I'm like, well, a book is a part of you. A book is something you can hand down to people. A book is something you can hand out. And there's a certain gifting element to that. But most definitely, you want to engage the reader because you're actually engaging now in a conversation. At least when you're reading great books, you're now stepping into a conversation that's been going on for thousands of years. If you're truly at that level in your mind where you're like, you know what, let me engage Aristotle, let me engage Twain, Herman Melville, let's talk about it. Let's engage Copernicus or Kepler or Isaac Newton. And those are like, the greatest minds to ever live. But all I'm trying to say is you have a great mind. Your mind is really no different than theirs. It's that they committed to this. Kepler committed to astronomy. Newton committed to calculus, right? Twain committed to American commentary. Plato committed to these dialogues and asking these questions and recording what Socrates was saying. What are you committing to? Right? And so it's practical once you start reading these books and you start slowly stepping your way up into it, that if you have your pencil and you can underline and you think about it, you process it, you then decide what you agree with and what you don't agree with. And that's the original kernel of critical thinking. But you got to have a legit justified argument that's well thought out if you're going to be taken seriously and if you're going to really engage that author. Because it's like oftentimes it's like taking a knife to a gunfight if you're trying to critique the great books. If you're unprepared for that, it's not going to work. So this really helps, and this helps to get ready for that kind of level of engagement. Reading speeds, slow it down. You know, I was at one point I was like, nah, man, I'm just going to plow through these books, and I'm realizing as I age that I don't want to do that. I want to take it in, man. You know, these people have spent, I'll tell you, like Virgil's Aeneid. It took 11 years for him to write that. 11 years to write Virgil's Aeneid. So Virgil spent 11 years on this piece of work, and I'm going to just plow through it in like a week. I should probably take a week on one of the books of the Aeneid, right? Maybe I want to take a month on one book. If it's John Milton's Paradise Lost, let me take a month on it. You know what I'm saying? Like on one part of it, because these guys were at such a level of embedding the meaning inside of it that for me to just rush past it, I'm going to miss so much of the fruit that's inside of the text. So reading speeds is also an interesting part of how we do it. I'll read a little bit here from Adler. He says on page 39 under reading speeds, our point is really simple. Many books are hardly worth even skimming. Some should be read quickly, and a few should be read at any rate, usually quite slow. That allows for complete comprehension. It is wasteful to read a book slowly that deserves only a fast reading. Speed reading skills can help you solve that problem, but this is only one reading problem. The obstacles that stand in the way of comprehension of a difficult book are not ordinarily and perhaps never primarily physiological or psychological. They arise because the reader simply does not know what to do when approaching a difficult and rewarding book. He does not know the rules of reading. He does not know how to marshal his intellectual resources for the task. No matter how quickly he reads, he will be no better off he'll be no better off his intellectual resources for the task. No matter how quickly he reads, he will be no better off he'll be no better off it, as is too often true. He does not know what he is looking for and does not know when he has found it. That's a very important point. Let me get a pencil real quick. That's an important point, right? And this is what I'm going to bring out real quick. He says he does not know the rules of reading. He does not know how to marshal his intellectual resources for the task. That is so primary when it comes to the project of reading. You have to marshal your intellectual resources. What does that mean? Well, for me, it means I got to shut my phone off. It means I got to shut off notifications, close all technology. And I'm going in this text. It's me and this person in this text. In many ways, it sounds like an intellectual battle, because I know that Mortimer talks a lot about grappling with the text. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to grapple with it. And so it's like Brazilian jiu-jitsu or some kind of a fighting sport where you have to know what your opponent is doing. It's very strategic. But with books, it's obviously like, what is your argument? What's your word? What's your thesis? And for me to really engage you, I have to harness all that intellectual resource that I have at my disposal, i.e., your focus. So, you know, I want to keep this at about 30 minutes. We're going to keep it popping, but that was just a real quick. And also, I'm practicing doing this. Obviously, I need to do it when people aren't doing yard work and we're not doing stuff in the kitchen. I might have to set some different stuff up. But the reality is, you know, we want to keep it at about 30 minutes just to chill. We're going to work through this. That's the first part. We covered elementary reading and made a couple of quick comments on Mortimer Adler. We're certainly going to get into it. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Hold on. yeah, I'm gonna add this to the books that I'll give out. It's this one, so there'll be 6 right now. I said the first 10 to subscribe and share will get something. Right now, I got 6 books. I'll have 10 by tomorrow or the next day. But hey, man, this is organic. You know, I'm not forcing anything. This is for fun. This is for you. This is for me. In many ways, I'm talking to myself, hyping myself up for, you know, using my mind, which is something that isn't really, it's not really like promoted anymore. I don't really feel or sense the promotion of mind. I feel and sense the promotion of go get a degree. I feel and sense the promotion of sign up for classes and stuff. But are you really using your mind? You know what I'm saying? Or the promotion for, yo, go start a business, go get your money up and this and that. And that's right. But if you're not using your mind, then what's the point? Because it's that, you know, you weren't designed to be an economic unit. You're a human with a multitude of dimensionality in yourself. You feel joy, you feel despair. You know what I mean? You search for meaning, you put meaning into the world. That creates art, that creates poetry, that creates language, it creates the vibes, the feelings. You know what I mean? We get so far removed from that. And so this is really about a promotion of utilizing one's mind and harnessing one's intellectual activities. If you're in the Texas area, San Antonio, I do great book seminars. All year we're doing great book seminars. Let me know in the comments or let me know on IG. You can follow the IG page for this channel at Exalted Dialectics IG. My personal IG is cosmic.ruination. You know, so that's just kind of how we're doing it. So I'm going to cut it off. I know I got someone just popped in, man. Much love, respect. I'm going to upload it right now. Try to keep it around 30 minutes because I know people got stuff to do. And yeah, let me know if I can help. And we're going to get it going, man. All right. Think, learn, respect. Peace.